Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel Let's Talk Boxing. You know, I wasn't able to stay up last night to watch the Top Rank card on ESPN, but I recorded it and saw it today, and I have to say, what a fantastic card. Well done to Top Rank for bringing together the matches that they brought together, because they were hugely entertaining to me. I'm going to talk a little bit about Richard Torres. We're also going to talk about the Pedraza and BARBOZA JR fight, as well as the main event between Navarrete and Liam Wilson. I thought they were all terrific in their own way. We'll start off with the main event. You know, Liam Wilson came out and he was boxing in a quite a conservative manner, waiting for Navarrete to come onto him and seeking to capitalize. And we know that Navarrete is almost like a Ricardo Mayorga type of character. That's how I see him anyway, whereby a lot of his successes come with the fact that he's so unorthodox. So they come from unusual patterns that you don't usually see as a fighter. And because of that, because fighters are trained in drills, a lot of their defense is instinctive. So when you're doing something completely out of the norm, it can take a while for a fighter to get used to what they're seeing. And the thing is with Navarrete, unlike Mayorga, is that because he's got such a good engine and he increases the tempo as time wears on, with Mayorga, what you would get is that guys would become used to the unorthodox angles. Their sort of more orthodox work would mean that they get from A to B quicker, and their stuff would start to land more effectively. And as a result, the longer the fight wore on against Mayorga, the elite level fighter would get stronger. Whereas with Navarrete, even though you're absorbing a lot of damage early often with these unorthodox punches, you might be having some success, and then he starts to drown you with the intensity and the conditioning that he has, the ability to go through the gears in terms of the tempo. So now you're tired against Navarrete as the fight wears on, and you're trying to defend against shots that you're not typically used to defending against. You're in the unknown territory. To use the analogy, it's kind of like being a really good swimmer in a swimming pool, and you're really used to doing laps and things like that, and then all of a sudden somebody throws you in the open water when you're really tired. Well, now you've got these waves to deal with, you're getting seaweed in your eyeballs, you're getting some sort of fish nipping at your ankles. It becomes a completely different test. It doesn't mean you're not a very good swimmer, but you are used to swimming in conditions that are controlled, conditions whereby you say these are sets of rules. In a way, you're taught this is what you should do and this is not what you should not do. And when Navarrete comes in and does things that you're not used to seeing, he's making unorthodox errors, so to speak, he then starts to put you in a very uncomfortable position, and now the waves are raining over you and it's a lot harder for you to swim. Now, in terms of the fight itself, Wilson, like I said, was conservative early on, and he was waiting for Navarrete to make errors, and he was falling onto shots. You heard Barry Hunter at ringside shouting, hold the phone, hold the phone. What he's essentially telling him to do is act as though he's holding the telephone. Keep your guard up here. And you saw that these big looping shots from Navarrete were landing on the side of the glove, and Wilson was looking comfortable and composed, and it was tight. They were nip and tuck rounds early on, but he wasn't looking out of his depth. And eventually he landed that big left hook, stroke, sort of uppercut, like a shovel hook. And he hurt Navarrete, and he jumped on Navarrete. Now, I have to say, although I'm a fan of Navarrete's and have been for a number of years, right? Long-time subscribers will remember that when he fought Isaac Dogboe, I was stunned at the odds, and I got on Navarrete, and during the fight live, he was lighting up Dogboe. He was battering him, and because he was still an unknown quantity and people just didn't know who he was 10-1 in play when he was battering Dogboe. I've never made more money in my life gambling on boxing, because at that point I'm watching it and I'm thinking the only conclusion I can arrive to is that because they don't know him, the bookies are assuming that the favourite, who's highly rated, is going to find a way to get out of this. It's just, you know, a bit of a blip midway through the fight. Whereas I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this is confirming what I thought here, that there's too much of a physical discrepancy and he's struggling here. He's going to get stopped. And it was something like 10-1, I think, for the stoppage or for the win. I can't remember now. But I made a lot of money on that. So I'm a fan of his, okay? However, despite being a fan of his, despite following his career for so long when he was still, like I said, an unknown quantity, and when that happens, you feel vindicated and you want a guy to do well. Despite all that, I have to say, if I was the referee last night, I would have waved that fight off. And I know Liam Wilson was complaining about a long count. Listen, there's a difference between the sort of long count complaints that a lot of Deontay Wilder fans were making about Tyson Fury, you know, whether it was 10 seconds that he was down or whether it was 10.5 seconds or 11 seconds. Because the minute you hit the canvas, the referee pushes the opponent to the other side of the ring, takes the count from ringside and then continues with the count. It's not going to be exact. It's not a stop clock, right? That's different to what happened last night, though. Last night, it wasn't so much that the count itself went over 10 seconds. It was the fact that by the end of the count, you need to be ready to defend yourself. You need to be ready to fight. Navarrete stood up. He was buzzed. He purposely spat his gum shield out. Go look at it again. He's standing up and he just spits it out. And he's instantly looking towards it. He's letting the ref know, look, my gum shield fell out. He knows what's going on. He's lucid. He's buying himself time. That alone could be a disqualification. The referee picks it up. He looks tentative. He's telling him, come here, come here. He's wasting a lot of sort of time. What am I going to do here? He gives him the gum shield. Doesn't wash it, gives it straight back to him. He complains, perhaps, that it hasn't been washed. And he's sort of like talking, he's wasting time. Then he's fumbling with it, trying to put it back in. And then he finally puts it back in. There was a major delay between the count ending and Navarrete being ready to fight. Are you ready to fight or not? And he's, like I said, he's not steady on his feet. But if a situation doesn't go your way like that, you've got to take it upon yourself to deal with the matter. And the fact of the matter is, after that happened and he had 30 seconds left to go, he was far too composed, so to speak. They were praising him on the telecast. He's really composed. Well done to him. No. You're a big puncher. He cannot stand on his feet. I'm a firm believer in making a fighter do what he doesn't want to do. What does Navarrete want in that moment? He wants you to think, yeah, let me try and pick the correct shot. Let me be composed here. Let me stalk him. He doesn't want you jumping on him. He can barely stand up. His legs are gone. He doesn't want that pressure. He wants a moment so that he can get to the end of the round, go back to his corner and get an additional minute. And what did Wilson do? He let him have that. He should have taken a page out of Tunde Ajayi's book and said, empty the gun. And had he gassed and lost, all right, he would have lost, fair enough. But that was his moment. Those 30 seconds that he had left, he will never have a better moment than those isolated 30 seconds of winning a world title. And he didn't take it. But then after that, in the following round, he went away from his boxing and he started trying to really put it on Navarrete rather than being composed and trying to pick the punch. And in that following round, I understand it, because you're wondering, is the opponent still, has he found his feet yet? Is he still concussed? After that following round then went though, so after the end of the fifth round, then you have to get back to what helped you get into that position. Instead, he started to get into a brawl with Navarrete and he kept switching southpaw. Now, I've said in the past, switch hitters have an advantage when they're capable of doing it at a high level because it enables them to have different plans to go to. Plan A, B, C, D, E. You're not stuck in one method. You are varied. However, there has to be a method to what you're doing. And when he was switching southpaw, what it was enabling Navarrete to do was create space for his own backhand, and he was shooting these shovel hooks into the body. He was creating an opening in that space, and he was able to land that quite consistently. And he was getting lit up far too often, and I'm not sure why his corner were not saying to him, stop switching, stay orthodox. And instead he started to get into these battles, and he's looking for individual heavy-handed shots, and he does have power in both hands, it looked like, but it just wasn't the right fight to fight. And eventually he got broken down. He showed an awful lot of heart. His corner pulled him out. He did say he wanted to win it for his father, and he certainly did himself proud. And look, he's still inexperienced, so he could bounce back, but decision making plays a vital role in the upper echelons of the game. I said this in the past when Kid Galahad fought Kiko Martinez. When he was switching, and he's a switch hitter too, when he was switching, he was putting himself in areas where he was becoming in danger of being caught by the backhand of Kiko Martinez. The right hand of Kiko was finding this looping shot, this looping trajectory where it was just falling short, often landing on the shoulder, the chest, but it created the angle for that shot. So don't switch. You're not switching for the sake of switching. There has to be a purpose behind it. So maybe Liam Wilson can learn from this. His stock would have risen 100%. The Australian boxing scene's really making noise at the moment. It's making waves, and I'm sure we'll see him back. And I'm looking forward to seeing Navarrete in the ring again. Oscar Valdez looking very sharp, got in the ring post-fight, and there was a lot of respect between the two. That should be a really good fight to watch. So hopefully we get to see that soon. Moving on from the main event, let's talk a little bit about Pedraza against BARBOZA JR. Listen, man. I've always said Pedraza is Tank Davis's best win. He is a quality operator. Both of these guys are. There are some fighters whereby they could teach you something, or you could really learn something from them, but perhaps they don't have the athletic ability to be really elite. But in terms of knowledge, like an old sensei, that's who Pedraza is. That boy knows how to fight, man. Some of the little technical things he does, he really knows the game. And the reason Tank was able to blow him out is because of that explosiveness. It's not got to do with the boxing ability and levels. And you saw that when he fought Loma. Loma, who in my opinion would beat Tank Davis and is superior to Tank, he's not the athletic athlete that, or certainly not from a power perspective. He's not as explosive as Tank Davis. So when he's not able to blow Pedraza out, it then becomes a boxing match. And then you start to see how good Pedraza is. And we've seen this consistently throughout his career. I felt that Barboza Jr. was winning the fight. I felt he won the fight 6 rounds to 4, or perhaps even a draw again. It was very close. It was a pick'em. Let's talk about how it played out. Barboza has a wonderful jab and distance control. His feet are brilliant. He's able to back off whilst always being in a position to punch. He's very composed. He's just a beautiful boxer to watch. I'm such a fan of both of these guys and the way they operate. And like I said, from an athletic perspective, much like Pedraza, perhaps he's not the biggest puncher. And if he was a puncher, the rest of the division would be in serious trouble. But because he's not a puncher, he was sort of getting hunted down by Pedraza, who typically is not a hunter. He's typically a boxer. It does speak to his abilities, the fact that he's able to adapt like that. And what he was able to do is come behind a high guard, really, and he's shown a lot of upper body movement and giving different looks. But the tempo he was entering in was pretty one-paced. And what he would do is try and make himself a hard target to find, catch a lot of the shots on the gloves and the forearms, and then look to land short, sharp counters against Barboza when the opportunity arose. And one of the problems that Barboza had is that although he was lighting him up from range often, he was very creative with engaging the guard and creating openings, very accurate, brilliant distance control, fantastic at pivoting out and changing the angle. One of the things he had a problem with is exiting the pocket while standing quite upright. So even if he was to pivot out, he's doing it while quite upright. He didn't change the levels enough. He was fighting too tall. And so what would happen is, as the fight wore on, Pedraza started to figure that out. And he would come in low, essentially, catching shots, showing a lot of upper body movement. And on that pivot, on that exit, from that crouched position, he'd throw an uppercut or he'd throw a right hand. And he'd be able to start landing shots to time him on his exit. Okay, and that timing of Pedraza was able to really cause Barboza some problems as the fight wore on, because Barboza was forced to work at a high tempo. However, early in the fight, you saw that it was Barboza's timing that was also brilliant. Every time Pedraza would try to step in, he would eat a flurry of shots, and that jab was beautiful. It was a beautiful fight to watch. Okay, you didn't see this explosion, you didn't see these athletic gifts from either guy, but just as a spectacle, you could see the high level operation that was occurring. And ultimately, I just felt that Barboza was able to outwork Pedraza. Very varied as well with these combinations going to the body and to the head. I still though think that if he's going to reach the highest level, if he's really going to become a dominant force, if that's his aim, then he needs to be able to be a little bit more astute defensively at mid-range. You're great at range, there's no doubt about it. But because you're not a puncher to clean guys out, you are going to get guys that are going to be pushing forward to be able to force you into exchanges. And at that mid-range sort of distance, you need to be able to be more well protected than just exiting and eating shots here or there. If that was Teofimo Lopez who he was calling out last night, or Redris Prograis, at mid-range, those guys carry power, man. You don't want to be in a position whereby you're getting caught with big shots on your exit. So you're talking about two high-level operators here. Pedraza is going to be always one of those wily old characters who's going to be able to potentially topple the top of the game, and perhaps he just lacks the athleticism to really become an elite fighter himself, but as a technical boxer he's superb. And then you got Barboza, who showed some outlandish skills last night. Beautiful stuff. But he's going to have to work on a couple of areas defensively, in my humble opinion, but another one who is a supreme talent. Now let's talk about Richard Torrez. Obviously we're talking about a relatively small heavyweight by today's standards, 6'2". He's now 5-0 with 5 knockouts after stopping James Bryan. Bryan was unable to answer the call for the second round after being led on to a really wonderful uppercut from Torrez, and it was right at the end of the round. He did beat the count, but then he was not able to carry on after that. He seemed to be complaining about an ankle. I'm not too sure that the ankle went, to be honest. It certainly didn't look like that from where I was sitting. It was a very solid flush shot, and I don't think he recovered from it. Now, one of the reasons I've been saying I think Torrez could become a real star is because I think that his marketability would enable him to be really catapulted into the public eye and to transcend boxing. This is a guy who's very funny and he's very quirky. He's very popular in the American Olympic team. You know, he's really close friends with people like Bruce Carrington, Shushu, and he would often joke about the fact that, you know, the reason they call him Shushu is because nobody wants to be around him. Like, you know, Shushu, get away from me. And Bruce is always like, just all the pranks he's suffered at the hands of Richard Torrez, he just has this look on his face like, here we go again. He's like that older brother that they seem to, or younger brother that's annoying, that they all seem to love. but they just think, oh god, here we go again. And that sort of character can translate, particularly because he's into so many random things. Like he's into the theatre, he's into dances, he plays a ukulele, he's quirky in the sense that he grew out his hair, this big curly hair, grew a moustache, he's got this dog that he goes out into nature with, into the wilderness, and he's putting videos up on Instagram. Women seem to really love this guy. And so he's also Hispanic, and yet he's got like this all-American university type persona. And so he's going to have a potential fan base coming from different areas, and it could really transcend the sport. And because he's so exciting as a fighter, hardcore boxing fans are not going to hold it against him. They're not going to say, who is this nerd trying to sell himself? They're going to look at him and they say, fair enough, he's a quirky character, but this boy can fight. And he's an exciting fighter. And although he's 6'2", he makes himself smaller, which means a lot of big heavyweights have to punch down, which enables his entry. I do think, though, he's got one little weakness which could result in quite a bad accident waiting to happen, so to speak. And he has been stopped in the amateurs by Jalilov. And Jamie Bourne said one of the things he was impressed with when it came to Richard Torres is the fact that after being stopped by him, when they fought again, he went straight at Jalilov. And so that shows a level of mental strength too, to add to all the quirkiness. But one of the things that I found about him is that there isn't much lateral head movement, which is a weird thing to say about a decorated amateur, right? But he's almost got this wide stance to start off with, and he shifts his feet with that wide stance, and he moves quite quickly with his feet, even though he looks a little bit stiff. But when he's got that wide stance, from there, he doesn't really bring in that lateral head movement. It's almost like an up and down movement. And because he's moving always across that center line, his head's always moving up and down. It's not really side to side. It's not like a Mike Tyson who's going to come running forward but slipping side to side. It's not like an Alexander Povetkin who will come in and bait you and offer you a target and then slip and come over with a big powerful shot. He's coming in and he's feinting a lot, and he's changing the level up and down, and then he'll launch that enter. But because he's moving up and down, you know that potentially you could time him down that center line. And even last night, even at a low level like this, you'll see that on his entry, he gets clipped slightly with straight shots. And that could be a potential danger for him, because if he's up against a proper serious heavyweight who's going to be able to get on that back foot comfortably and lure him in, he's going to be able to potentially time him with uppercuts or just straight solid jabs or straight backhands as he seeks to enter the pocket. So for me, he needs to be a little bit more varied with how he disguises his entry point. But once he's inside, he's very, very good. He throws really short, powerful shots. And so far, although he gets clipped, he's not struggled to get in. So it's not as though people are going to be able to keep him on the end of a jab easily. He's going to be a handful for anybody that fights him. There's no doubt about that. And back in 2017, he fought Jared Anderson in the amateurs. And he beat Jared Anderson. And they're the same age, 23 years old. And both of them have knocked out everybody they've ever fought. Both of them are with Top Rank. So expect that to be a fight that you see in the future. And that could be a really interesting fight down the line. Let me know what you think about the Top Rank card and everything we've spoken about today. I also uploaded a video late last night discussing Kell Brook, and not just Brook, but the likes of Ricky Hatton, the likes of Adrian Broner. We really delve into the psychology of why some fighters fall off the bandwagon. If you like that sort of thing, you want to explore the psychological reasons behind all these sorts of things, check that video out. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.